Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. When we talk about the NFC, some questions have remained unanswered for 17 years now. One, should NFC remain needs-based, supporting smaller, weaker provinces, or why not make it partly performance-based? We'll be talking about this. We'll also be talking about why Pakistan has been unable to move past the NFC award for 15 years. We're also going to talk about population weightage and the fact that it should be reduced in favor of the new criteria like human development, environment, water security. All of these are questions that need to be explored, and perhaps it's time that it's going to happen. What kind of a change is possible at this time? All of these questions we're going to be exploring today. I have with me today Mahrukh Hameed, who's a senior economist from PIDE. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have with us Dr. Usman Chohan, who's advisor on economy. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Khakan Hassan Najib, who's a senior economist, and Dr. Aisha Ghaus Pasha, who's former finance minister of Punjab. Thank you for being with us today. Usman, like we were earlier saying, first of all, why do you think that it can't be? You know, one of the major questions is the size of the pie, right? As far as the federal provincial resource is concerned. Do you think it's time that it be re-evaluated in the light of new considerations, first of all?
Well, first of all, it's always a pleasure to be on your show, and I'm grateful that you had me for this topic particularly because I'm particularly passionate about this. I have thought for a long time about the redesign of Pakistan along different lines because what we've seen over the last 80 years, we can't have over the next 80 years. The fundamental aspect here is fiscal federalism, so the center versus the provinces. For a long time, as you know, it's just been the same award structure going on, and it's been, as you mentioned correctly, demographic based. What that incentivizes is that you have more poor people having more kids. I mean, that's really what you're trying to. Instead, you should have more accountability in it, because some of the metrics that are coming in are very horrifying. I'll give one province. Sindh has a lower literacy rate today than it had 20 years ago. So we're not far enough to be going backwards now. You have to put this into the structure where you're rewarding across a compact that is understood by all federating units that yes, we have to invest in the people. It's education, it's health and the environment. And once you start to put these incentives in, you may see a better reason for rewarding it. Otherwise, the Federation has had enough. And I totally understand the Federation's position on this. So I imagine a better redesign. And there's debate about how many provinces we should have in the first place. And these kinds of things need to be brought on the table. The next 80 years cannot be like the past 80 years.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Aisha, Dr. Aisha Ghaus Pasha, and then I'll come back to Dr. Khalid here. Dr. Aisha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Dr. Aisha, when we talk about the NFC award, first of all, do you agree with Usman when he says that perhaps it should be incentivized rather than just based on, you know, the kind of share that we are looking at present? Do you agree with that?
Actually, yes, I do. And let me elaborate why I'm saying so. Because, being a part of the previous NFCs, I was very closely involved. And a couple of things that were very clearly stated in the NFC when it was negotiated was that we were looking for not only more need-based award, we were also looking for an equity-based award, an award that will overall improve the fiscal position of the both tiers of government, which is the federal as well as the provincial level of government. So what have we seen over the last so many years following the 7th NFC award? The provinces haven't put in the fiscal effort that was required, neither did the federal government. The kind of expenditure rationalization and reform that was envisaged at that time, we didn't see that materializing, neither at the federal level nor at the provincial level. And the kind of development expenditure reprioritization that was required, both again at the federal and provincial levels, didn't come through. So the award definitely has to be more incentive-based to improve the overall fiscal state of the public finances in the country, and it also has to be more outcome-oriented. We need to
Aisha, when we
incentivize
talk about,
performance.
I'm going to interject here. When we talk about the provinces, they, as far as the NFC is concerned, it's their constitutional right, and they argue that this is not a discretionary grant, and therefore, when we talk about, whether it can be increased constitutionally, when we are looking at this change, that, in your opinion, can be based on, like you are saying, performance based. But then it will also depend, like smaller provinces fear losing out, right?
Actually, it's regarding the design, how we want to design the award. There are ways in which we can ensure that no province actually becomes a loser in this kind of an incentive-based of revenue sharing formula. If, for example, instead of just looking at the performance of revenue generation, if we see it in relation to its growth over time, or in relation to its fiscal capacity, then it will not be very burdensome on the smaller provinces. I think it's a matter of us being clear what we want to do, and I think the provinces will be willing to think through this and go through this, because actually it's at the need of the hour. Look at the public finances at this time.
But do you think that the provinces can do this? I mean, when we talk about, as far as the new award is concerned, can it address their concerns while, meeting national needs also? Because it's a question of balancing, right?
Absolutely. See, here, what last NFC did demonstrate to us was national cohesion, a feeling of unity. The federating units all came together and were willing to accommodate each other in the larger national interest. I think that spirit has to be inculcated again in the whole proceedings, and let it not be totally driven by what I want and by each individual federating unit, but what the country at this point of time needs. And because I've also been a finance minister at Punjab at one stage, let me also tell you that the provinces are very much there for the national government. We do realize, the provinces did realize at that stage, that things have to be done. It's just a matter of how it's structured. We have to create a situation where everyone is in a win-win situation. No one is losing out. If you start asking provinces to lose, or particular provinces to lose, then the situation will not be,
I think you're sort of going towards the same, but with the 11th NFC in place, do you think this can be turned into an opportunity for a kind of national consensus, rather than this doesn't have to be a center and province standoff, right? Necessarily so.
I think so. I think this is just the right time. What I feel, let me give you a very realistic picture. I don't think the provinces will really be very positive if we start putting on federal responsibilities, sharing of federal responsibilities on them. Because as you pointed out earlier, they feel that this is their right. It's just the revenues which are collected by the federal government, which are theirs, and it's being transferred to the provinces. So I think if we create this kind of a win-win situation where everyone is, no particular province is really losing, and that can be worked out. The formula, if you accommodate the smaller provinces in grants for the backwardness and so on and so forth, and you incentivize the revenue collection of the provinces, the growth rate, through the growth rate and so on and so forth, I think this can be achieved. And I think the provinces realize that the debt which the federal government is sustaining on behalf of the overall country is not sustainable. Pakistan has to get out of this trap in which we go, we find ourselves where we are being sucked in. We take more debt to repay debt. We are unable to get out of this debt trap. But the way to do it is not by taking away resources from them. The way to do it is to basically devolve the 18th Amendment functions which were supposed to go to the provinces and ask them to fulfill their constitutional responsibility and fully financing those devolved functions. That, I think, is a good way forward.
I know, Aisha, that you have limited time, but a quick question. As far as, this province, this cry for more provinces, how do you look at it? There's one way of looking at it as far as population is concerned. There's that resources issue, but this cry for it, and then how many there should be, as far as the 4 provinces at this time are concerned. What is your stance on this?
I am a very big believer in devolution. I think the more the responsibility is devolved, the better the chances of delivery, and certainly better chances of accountability. So in any case, I'm a very, very big firm believer that one way to improve governance in this country and improve service delivery is to just devolve to the right level of government and give them the powers to perform, give them the space to perform, give them the capability to perform. That's the way forward. Centralizing, taking over services from lower levels to upper level will not work. It doesn't work. It cannot work. So I think, having said that, the right type of move forward is to actually make the local governments more operational, give them the wherewithal to really be a very effective unit of service delivery. That is what we need to do.
So we could not necessarily increase the number of provinces, but empower them more on the local government level, right? That's an option.
That's an opportunity. That's already existing. And I have no real big issues about more provinces. Of course, if there is capacity at the local downward level, at that level, divisional level, or whatever, what have you, you can devolve actually. But the important question, it has its implications of increasing overheads and so on and so forth, of maintaining and administering services. But nonetheless, the provision that already exists is a strengthening of the local government. Let's just go ahead and take that.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you for your very valuable time. I think Dr. Khalid, Aisha has really summed it up quite aptly when she says that, it's about giving that kind of devolved power.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with her? You think that it's possible to do so as far as empowering on the local government level is concerned? Because when we talk about governance, there's been that debate for a very long time when we talk about local government and we talk about, the present system as it exists. How do you look at that?
Well, actually, I'll take you back from where Usman actually started the debate.
Please.
That is that we have to take this fiscal federalism as one important policy vehicle which actually sets up the fiscal policy framework for a country.
Okay.
Now in that, as Dr. Aisha has rightly mentioned, that we are still missing that local government aspect. I'll take you to another aspect which is related to it, that even not just on the delivery side, for the revenue collection side, we also need to have that implemented. Because the tax collection is basically a function of not just the compliance, but it's also based on public trust.
Right.
Now, just imagine a person living in a southern Punjab area is not directly responding to the federal services which are being delivered.
Yeah.
It's going to be the provincial or the local government services which are going to be delivered. Now, even your first question of increasing that pie, that essentially is embedded in this NFC award, that if we really don't empower those governments which can actually face the public and give them that trust that whatever you are giving us is actually being used for your betterment.
For example, the AGP report has highlighted massive financial irregularities, for example, at the federal level. And while if you talk to, for example, the KP, they, actually defend their budgetary surpluses by saying that it's about, their buffers for tough times. And we are looking at a climate crisis even as we speak right now.
Yeah.
So, do you think that, instead of the provinces and the federation blaming each other, we are, like I said to Aisha also, it is about both sides working towards a transparent, accountable system
Absolutely.
Which do you think is possible now? Because, of course, the last one, it's been years also, right? And
This is what you have also earlier mentioned, that if we need to have something which is accountable, which is trustworthy, and also delivering on our required services to be delivered, that is the right time that we should embed it in the NFC formula.
Okay.
For example, we have been talking about incentivizing. Now, what kind of incentives would be there? That is essentially what we have just mentioned, that it would be transparency, it would be accountability. For example, linking your resources with health outcomes, maternal mortality, infant mortality rate. On the education side, it could be the children out of the school or their learning levels which they are achieving. So if we can embed that within that formula, that would actually run through all the government.
But for that, I'm sorry, I'm going to interject, but for that, it's not essential, and this is what Aisha also said, that there have to be more provinces, right? This can be done within the framework that it exists, because if we talk about Southern Punjab, for example, or we talk about, KP, like I said, provinces that feel, those areas that feel that they are not at par with perhaps, other parts of the province. And then there's that argument for more provinces. So
when we talk about having more provinces, essentially this is not about resource redistribution.
Okay.
It's about better service delivery. If we think that certain parts of certain provinces have not been given their right kind of services, I'm not saying lesser, but that adequate in terms of requirements, services are not delivered, then you have to really think about that system.
But isn't that, and I'm going to include Usman in this also, Usman, but isn't that an effectiveness issue? For the lack of a better word, how efficient that government is, or how efficient that system is, what Dr. Khalid is saying, from what I got, it's about those, trying to man or deal with those irregularities, whether they are at the federal level or the provincial level, or to make it more efficient as far as the system is on the ground level, right?
Yes, I think in principle you're making a good point, and so was Dr. Aisha, but I'm sympathetic to what Dr. Khalid is saying. The fact is that all of the money of any province is spent to beautify their capitals. The moment you step out of the capital, you see such horrific poverty that you don't feel that it's the same country. The gap is like, okay, here in Islamabad we're first world, and then it goes out to like fourth world. That's all provincial responsibility, and 99% of Pakistanis live in a province. They don't live in a federal territory.
But there's disparity within different regions of the provinces also.
Exactly, and that's precisely my point. That disparity is kept as a status quo because the provincial capitals use much of the expenditure where their power elite is concentrated. There is a power elite for each province.
So how do we go towards that balance then? Because, I just want to highlight these issues. There are these issues when we talk about unnecessary allocation of supplementary grants. There's massive budget demands without needs assessments.
Yes.
There's lapse of funds due to non-surrender in time. There's non-recording of commitments, which is basically poor budget management.
Yes.
So when we talk about these issues, at what level do you deal with them? You're saying they have to be dealt with on the provincial level, and the way that the allocation happens, not at the federal level at all.
Precisely, and these are the exact evidentiary elements you need to see the argument for more provinces. I'm a firm believer in this, because I'm not looking
You don't think it can happen?
Oh, absolutely
it can be addressed without more provinces?
Absolutely not.
Ji,
I would
Dr.
like to
Khalid.
add,
Ji.
I think this is not about provinces.
Okay, fair enough.
We have got good fiscal laws and regulations in place. For example, we have got the Public Financial Management Act 2019. We have got fiscal responsibility and debt limitation law. We have got a GFR, General Financial Rules, which has just been revised to 2025. Now, when we say that the provincial governments are better as compared to federal or the local, that's not the case. Any government can adapt to the required changes which are necessary for better spending, which are transparent, which are addressing the needs of the people.
And that can be done within the same framework, within the 4 provinces we have at the provincial level, governance level.
It is possible, but
and
again,
it has to be done balance-wise, right?
Again, what this actually is not a political question. It's about how we can deliver the services in a cost-effective and as per the need of the public there.
Okay.
Now, maybe this could be a referendum question. What do the people really think about it? For example, if we think that the people in Southern Punjab really feel that it's very far away for them to come to Lahore, and it would be better to come to a part which is near to them, because that can be both in terms of the distance as well as providing the necessary services, then why not? But in terms of fiscal
But you're
spending,
saying, in your opinion, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference until we address the balance, so to speak.
Exactly, and also implement the jurisprudence in terms of how fiscal expenditures and the needs are actually identified. You have rightly mentioned supplementary grants, having excess needs, and having projects which are actually not well defined, does not have that kind of a background scoping work with them. It's not a question of having more provinces or others. It's basically having better fiscal management.
I think that, of course, and you talk about better fiscal management, that's very important. But also, if we look at the federal, if you look at on the federal scene, the picture is that 96.26% of total expenditure went to general public services.
Yeah.
And then out of this, 86% on debt
Interest,
repayment and interest. So how much is left? It's 13.31 left for socio-economic functions. That's about 8%.
I totally agree with your point, but when we think from that angle, what we are trying to suggest is that the federal government is maybe better and the provinces are not better.
Okay.
Now what we are thinking to suggest now is that if we can make this NFC overcome these problems. You have rightly mentioned that it needs to be incentivized. So that incentive is actually going to create that pressure on the service delivery, and whichever province is not going to be able to do that, the part of the resource would remain with federal government. Now essentially a debt on the provincial governments or a debt on the federal government is still a sovereign debt.
But doesn't that allow the federal government to play favorites in a sense?
It is, and that is what needs to be curbed out. You have rightly mentioned that we are talking about the 11th NFC, and the last one was 7th. So that is something which needs to be sort of institutionalized, that it should be every 5 years, and there should be a review mechanism. The criterias which are set should be rightly used. For example, we talk about the poverty as an indicator. Nobody has talked about that whether the provinces are also spending on the poverty area. Has the poverty gone up or gone down? We are talking about the inverse population density. Does Balochistan spend on the same principle? We talk about the revenue generation efforts. Is there really a revenue generation effort? So you make that policy and you need to follow up. The problem here is that you do it very well at the beginning and then you simply left it out. So if you are going to do the same this time
and
also,
if you know that you're constantly being evaluated,
exactly,
then there's that axe handing on your head. But Usman, as far as capacity is concerned, do you think that the federal government has that kind of capacity? Sorry, the provincial governments, as far as all the 4 provinces are concerned, have that kind of capacity to be able to do this distribution, equitably and in a reasonable manner, with the kind of funds that they do have?
It is possible to do a lot of things. I echo what Dr. Saab is saying, that it is possible. There's an idealized conversation about this that has existed since 1947. And I believe that now is the time for us to think more soberly about the redesign. I mean, your largest province has 100 million people. It is the size of Mexico. And Mexico has 22 provinces. I mean, it's called the United States of Mexico for a reason. It helps to break things down for clarity, for accountability, and for service delivery. I
You're
agree
saying that the size itself is a huge factor in not being able.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to go. We have with us Dr. Khakan Najib, and I'm going to go with this. Dr. Khakan, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mahrukh.
Dr. Khakan, we're talking about the NFC and the fact that this debate that whether the provinces have it within them to regulate, as equitably regulate the finances, between, as far as a huge province, the kind of huge provinces that we have at this time, and the way that this allocation happens. Usman here is saying that perhaps the sheer size of it in some cases makes it relatively difficult. Do you agree with him?
So Mahrukh, first of all, I mean, it's very, very important that we, rethink the NFC. There are many, many areas that need to be rethought, whether it's revenue generation at the federal level or revenue generation at the provincial level. Whether it's the kind of work that even federal is now doing, which has been devolved and the monies have been given, so saving money is there. The 57.5% share is actually not 57.5%, it's much less. as we take a provincial surplus back from the provinces. So all I'm trying to say is that we have to rethink the NFC. So a lot of work would be required there. Now, NFC has to be accompanied by what I have always said, a PFC, a Provincial Finance Commission. What does that mean? That means the devolution of money down to district or local government. The local governments don't exist. So I know there is a debate about the provinces, but you have to take one step back. Look at the NFC. Last time it said the Pakistan's tax to GDP will be 15%. It's written in that document, will be 15% by fiscal year 2015. When I talk to you today, I can give you the exact figure of FY 2025. It's only 11.1%. So the envelope, both on the provinces and the federal government, has not grown that way. Now, we are talking about new provinces, which is a subject one should approach. But before we even approach that, Article 140 of the Constitution says the following, that there will be local governments. And this article was put, if I remember correctly, General Musharraf's time. Local governments would be there, and the Provincial Finance Commission means health, education spending would go down, even to the environmental spending. That's why you see schools being built, hotels being built in areas which have been flooded, because we have not had that mechanism. As far as the provinces are concerned, look, I mean, this debate, is simple. When you look at this, that Punjab would be probably the fifth largest country in the world. Sindh would be similarly that big. But what would happen is that for people to come all the way to Lahore Secretariat to get their things done, or regulating a school all the way, use the word regulation, regulating a school sitting in Lahore, which is 300 kilometers from Lahore, is not possible. So first of all,
you're saying that leave the debate of more provinces aside, but empower the local government. And that is what's really going to take care of the problem. That is what's going to take care of the issues on a local level. But why have we not been able to do so, in your opinion?
Because I think the devolution of the powers, the responsibilities of the monies, power, responsibility, and money, all three have been, centralized within the provincial metropolis. And this thing we haven't thought about. I'll just give you an example of a province, kind of a secretariat we've done in Bahawalpur. So we've already started this, where we've created a secretariat which is in Bahawalpur. It's not a new province, but we've tried to do that. And
but you think that all that we were hearing, and I'll go to the other guests on this also, but all about the southern province, which has been going on for a while, sort of this establishment of a secretariat in Bahawalpur will be able to largely cater to those issues, in your opinion?
So I'm going to, say this, that experience, there should be a paper on it, and we should be able to, if I give an opinion, it would be anecdotal. So how much has that helped? There should be a paper. Doing provinces is, a very, very serious thing.
What Ehsan Iqbal has said is that unanimous agreement can only be reached based on give and take, with rights and responsibilities anchored on democratic participatory federalism. So, like Aisha Ghaus Pasha was also saying, it's about coming to some sort of an accord and not making this about us versus them, as far as the federal versus the provinces is concerned, right? Do you think that this evaluation can occur without doing that?
I think it can. It's in Punjab. They can do this evaluation. But, the most important part is that there are different tiers of government, and they don't report to those tiers. Now, what I'm saying is very, very important in a political economy model. If you have local governments, so you have a mayor, an elected mayor, he or she is not kind of, in protocol, there is a protocol, but he or she is not kind of reporting to the province. So he or she can then take independent decisions based on how to really, really, really improve the health, education, or whatever else he or she is monitoring in that. That becomes truly important. Having said that, that doesn't take us away that maybe,
Punjab to have, whenever we have a local government system, there's also ministers for local governments. So it entails, quite a bit of, a personnel change also.
Yeah. And also remember that right now, even the federal government is doing some tasks like health, education, poverty, even policing for that matter. Do you really need police service when you already have the subject devolved at the provinces? So the whole idea of making the fiscal framework work at the federal, provincial, and local government level, at the same time think about devolving power to the local governments and creation of new provinces. Now, what I have just described to you as a model going forward for Pakistan entails tremendous amount of studies where we can say that we need to create new secretariats. These are all involving a large amount of costs, new bureaucracy, new kind of executive which will require training. You already know that in terms of taxation collection, let me give you an example. Pakistan's provinces collect 0.9% of GDP, just 0.9%. That's what 978 billion rupees. They have they have agri income tax, they have GST on services, they have urban property tax.
But it's about capacity, right? Because when we look at, for example, I mean, we talk about it's certainly an opportunity for us to increase the size of pie rather than, becoming about allocation, right? Increase revenue to increase the pie so that there can be more distribution. Is that not a possibility?
And that's very much a possibility. Similarly, on the federal level also, 10.1% is what we are collecting this year, which we've just closed. And we wrote in FY15 that we will be nearing 13 or 14% at the federal level. So there is a revenue envelope which has to come down. The devolution of subjects. You cannot read the NFC if you don't see what has happened in the 18th Amendment. So they have to be read together. There is so much work that needs to go into getting all this right. The other important thing is that you have to incentivize the provinces in a different way. Here's an example. We say right now that 82% of resources will come to the provinces depending on their population level. What are you trying to do? You are trying to slow down the growth of population in the country. I mean, that's a given, right? We're still maintaining 2.5% growth on population, which for a country like us, however many resources we create, is not going to be, we are not going to be able to have children in school. You already know that we have 25 million children out of school. So if you want to think about this differently, probably NFC cannot have 82% in terms of population. What should
we could also perhaps make it about human development, environment, or for example security, the criteria, rather than like you said about population, which is the criteria at this time, right?
So these are the ideas. So what we are now talking about, like an economist, is that you change the incentive structure and you create an incentive structure where provinces have incentive to collect more, where provinces have incentive to spend more prudently, where they have incentive to take over what has come down into 18th Amendment, and then that the PFC will always also be done. For that, you would have to do local government in the country. So you change the whole ambit of accounting principle based NFC to an incentive based. This will also require, probably at certain level, that the poverty expenditure of over 700 billion that federal government is doing to come down to the provinces, because poverty also is a provincial subject. It will depend how much the federal government wants to put. That, of course, we leave it to the federal government to decide. But putting all 700 plus billion into poverty when it's not your subject, then zakat, ushar, Baitul Mal, there are so many departments doing this. Now, this is not going to happen.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Khakan. Thank you for your very valuable input. Usman, in your opinion, how can the provinces be incentivized to expand their own revenue, for example?
It's a very important thing. It's the other half of the picture, because now we were talking about allocations, but actually the fiscal effort on their part is very important. City property tax is a very good one. Agricultural one is another. Having a balance between goods and services on your sales tax, these are already huge things. For property valuation alone, I mean, these are based on assessments that are decades old. So a lot of the stuff that we're doing is really just decades old. So for example, There was 30 million people in West Pakistan in 1948. It's grown 8-fold since then. This is the kind of proportions we're talking about, that things are not fit for purpose. Quaid-e-Azam in his last address in Dhaka said that if you stop thinking about yourselves as this region or that region, think of yourselves as Pakistanis, then we can move forward. And I think that is the underlying. You have correctly divorced the politics to keep it on the federation, but the politics is also important here. And I think for a national consensus, going through these hard knocks and designing it so that nobody's angry at anybody, but everybody's working together, that is the ideal format we're looking for.
Right. Dr. Khalid, do you agree with what, I mean, it's hard not to agree with what Usman is saying, but again, on the ground, the situation at present, I think Punjab is also doing some of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of trying to create revenue itself. And other provinces can of course follow suit from there. But in terms of equality, in terms of balancing, do you think that when we, on a federal level, when we rehash this, it is possible to do so in the kind of climate that we are looking at this time?
You're absolutely right, because when we talk about the fiscal transfers, one of the criteria is this equalization, where we think that the population needs to be given enough resources so that they can actually grow. From that perspective, you're absolutely right, but it cannot be the whole of the formula. As you have rightly identified.
So you're saying that has to be at least part of the criteria?
Exactly, it is, it should be, because without that, we cannot have that equity concern which is going to be solved. But at the same time, as you have rightly mentioned, this is the time that we need to have a provincial performance index, which would not just be revenue, but it would also have the service delivery. I would go back to my old point. I cannot collect tax at the federal level if the persons are not delivered the required services at even the local level. If my client is going to be satisfied, only then they are going to give taxes to the FBR as well. So if you want to have more resources,
if it has to be about efficacy, then
it has to be efficacy, it has to be adequacy, and it has to be transparent, so that the people can actually think about having a good system which is delivering to their needs, because this is what the public choice or the political system is about.
So you're saying that instead of thinking for the province to come up with distributing more share of which it has little, it's about the provinces trying to make itself more efficacious, and if they want to have that kind of tax, then of course it's about deliverance.
Both sides, because like Usman has rightly mentioned, there is plenty of potential at the provincial level as well. We can cite examples in the property taxation where cities can actually fund their 100% development budget simply if they can improve their revenue collection from the property tax. The agriculture is another side. The general services, general sales tax on the services is another. So we can think about the performance not just in terms of what they're collecting, rather we can think about the potential and then see that what are the efforts which has been made. But at the same time, it's always going to be the federal government or the bigger revenue collecting authority which is going to deliver. But unfortunately, over the past, what has happened is that the provincial governments have become dependent. It's a kind of a moral hazard problem in which the child knows that even if they don't work, they'll still be given good grades.
And that will probably take care of the issue if there is performance-based share.
At least if not 100%, like population cannot be taken out from the criteria wholly, but it can be reduced maybe up to 60%, and we can think about adding new criteria to it.
But it's interesting that the 18th Amendment says that a province's share in any future award cannot be lower than the share in the previous one. And if there is any kind of change, it has to be a constitutional amendment, which has to be agreed by, of course, 2/3 and all.
So we are not talking about the absolute amount here. What we are talking about is the criteria. So the federal government can really think that this is the block amount which is available to you. It's not going anywhere, but you have to do some efforts in order to get it.
If you do
exactly. So the amount is there. We are not saying that it's not committed, but it has to be based on certain parameters through which you are going to get it. So the amount is yours, but you have to win it. That's the whole catch.
On that note, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Khalid Mahmood, thank you for being with us. Dr. Usman Chohan, thank you for joining us. Dr. Hakan Najib, thank you for being with us. Dr. Aisha Qaus Pasha, thank you for your time. It's been an interesting debate about whether the size of the pie can be increased if we look at the federal level, or whether it's about performance and it should be about performance based for the provinces, and whether there can be work on the local government side, and as far as performance evaluation is concerned, as far as generation of revenue on a provincial level is concerned. I think those are all important questions, and perhaps those are the real questions when we talk about the NFC award and its share and making it more efficacious, rather than the question of the provinces being increased. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.